If you grew up in rural Canada through the 80s or 90s, most likely you had one of these in your backyard. Know what I'm talking about? That's right, I'm talking about the good old fashioned sandbox. Often nothing more than four boards screwed together and filled with some beach sand. It was the thing to do when we were a kid. Now, building sandcastles was fun, but nothing beat playing with your Tonka toys. That's right, playing with your Tonka toys back in the day in the sandbox was the most fun a boy could have. And today, I want to share with you my childhood dream of turning my Tonka toy into a remote control. Right here is an antique Tonka truck. I believe this was made in 1979. So today I am going to start my attempt of turning this toy Tonka truck into a remote control. So if you want to see how I do it, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Let's get started. To get started, I need to drill out this rivet so I can take this bottom plate off and see how much of the plastic undercarriage I need to cut away so that I'll be able to fit this SCX24 chassis underneath and make it fit. Now, this Tonka truck has both metal and plastic, so I'm going to have to be careful not to remove too much so that they stay together. Look at that, easy peasy. Well, there's the bottom plate off. We can take a better look at what's on the inside here. So it looks like I'll need to chop off a fair bit to get this up under there and make room for everything. So I think I'll just start by trimming this up in here. Trimming out the wheel wells. I'll maybe leave a little bit so that if I have to, I can maybe screw some stuff right into this plastic. And I'm going to save these to see if I can do something with those too. Now it looks like the plastic and the steel is all attached by these little tabs right in here, if you can see those. And as much as I would like to save this nice interior, I think a lot of it's going to have to get cut out to make room for the motor and the electronics. I also thought if I have to, I can maybe mount some of the electronics in the bed and they will be exposed. But yeah, I think I'll start by cutting out some of this, and I actually have a little hand saw that I'll use. See, I already made a mistake by getting a little too rough and I took that hole out of there. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I could use that to maybe run some wires through. But I should be a little more careful. Maybe I will need to get the Dremel out after all. But before I do that, I think I'll just give the front the same treatment. Okay, this isn't a bad start. I'm liking the way it looks. I will Dremel out some more in here and in here and try to make it look nice. Just a little bit of a mistake right there, but we can live with that. Let's see how this looks for sizing it up. Okay, it looks like the wheel well are going to line up fairly decent. This might be a little too long, but I think it will do. We'll make it work. And it looks like we're going to have lots of room up in here for both the servo and maybe even being able to mount something else up in there. But we are going to have to trim out a fair bit of the bottom here, which is the seats on the interior. Yep, so maybe just a little too long. If I have to, I can maybe trim a little bit of this wheel well out to make it work. But I'm not going to do that unless we have to. We'll see how it looks as we go. Alright, we have relocated to the garage. I got my Dremel hanging up with the wand and a plastic cutting decent disc. Thought I'd get as much as I can with that big disc before I switch over to something maybe a little smaller to get it inside. But yeah, let me set up the camera and we'll get started. Ooh, that thing gets warm. Let's see what that does. So hopefully that's going to give us enough motor to get our chassis to sit down in there, and for the motor to come up in through the middle here. Looks like I should take that little knob off there, and I can probably trim out more of this too. Alright, so I'm going to maybe try switching to one of these sanding bits. This is what just came with my Dremel, so I'm not sure the quality on these. But I'm thinking this will probably clean up some of that for me. So we'll try that. Not too shabby so far. I think I might have to take out more in here, because to get enough room for the steering might be tough. But I think we'll head back inside and size it up to see how it's looking. Alright, we are back at the bench and let's take a look at what we got so far. So I got as much ground out of here as I thought we needed, and I also went in with a wet rag, and kind of cleaned up any of that dirt that's been stuck in there since the 80s. So we got a nice clean body ready to be mounted. So I've also been working on the chassis. I went ahead and installed some shocks. I got a buzzsaw motor hooked up to a stock ESC and a stock servo. At some point I might have to upgrade this. And I've also been working on a few ways to mount this body. If you can see here, I made a couple posts. Now I made these out of just gluing popsicle sticks together. And I also got a little post here ground down. So with any luck, this should slide right on here. Alright, so it looks like it's going to fit with ample room. Now to mount this, I plan on gluing these popsicle sticks down and gluing this bracket down. And I also made this little bracket, again out of just some of the larger popsicle sticks, right to the back here, where I have a hole through the body that I will bolt this through that hole. Now, because this chassis sits flush against the bottom of this bed, I had to move the shocks down onto the frame. So yeah, I think that's how it's going to mount. Right in there like that. And by the time we compress these shocks, I think it should look just about perfect. Alright, I went ahead and drilled a hole through this bracket, and for cosmetic purposes painted my posts black. So I think now we're ready to mount it. So this should hold everything right in the middle. Alright, with this bracket screwed in, I can make a couple adjustments. And if I loosen it off a little bit, I should be able to slide it back and forth. And just to be sure, I'm going to put the tires on and check to see how they line up. So before I glue it, I will move this back and forth to make sure I got it in the right position. So I'll just go ahead now and put the tires on. Alright, so I can tell by looking at this, I think it could benefit by being moved, well, I don't know, maybe ahead just a little bit. So I'll see if I can just slide this chassis ahead ever so slightly. That's about where it's going to stay. The back wheel well doesn't line up perfect, but I think it will not look half bad. And the front seems to line up perfect. So maybe in the future I can look into shortening up these links and pulling that axle a little bit farther ahead. But I'm pretty happy with it right there. And now I'm going to take the wheels back off to make it easier to glue. Being careful not to move the chassis around. To glue these posts down, I will be using some super glue and baking soda. So I got this small bottle of super glue here and a little dish of baking soda. So my plan is to put a couple drops around each of the posts and then sprinkle some baking soda on it, and I'll do that maybe a couple of times. Okay, so I got a couple drops of super glue down in there, and I'm just going to sprinkle some baking soda right on top. Now pushing the baking soda up and around the posts. Build it up a little bit. Then I'll add a little more glue. I'm not sure if you can see down in there, but I just kind of got a couple mounds of baking soda mixed with glue. I'm going to let this dry and then I'll shake off any of the excess baking soda and see what we got. Alright, it looks like a bit of a mess in there, but it's all dried and I shook out some of the excess baking soda and it seemed to work pretty good. Now, for cosmetic purposes, I may go in there with a little bit of paint and black that all out, but it seems pretty solid. Now all I have to do is wait for the battery charge and we can test drive this thing. Of course, it's pouring rain out today, but lucky for us, we have a couple indoor obstacles we can test this truck out on. So here we go, my antique 1979 Tonka Truck toy turned RC. Let's see how it does over this obstacle. Not so good getting over the obstacle, but this can be kind of tough. Now this is just supposed to be a test drive, not a durability test, so I really don't want to crash it off the side of the table. Let's try this again though. Stuck in the same spot. This is not an easy obstacle to get across, especially in a truck like this. Let's see if it can climb up over this mountain. Needs a little bit of a boost to get up on top. So I managed to fit all the electronics in there and the battery sitting nicely in the passenger seat. That's what I didn't want to do. Well, looks like we got a bit of a durability test there too. She's still in good shape though. I think it looks good, and this thing was never going to be a top performer being so top heavy, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. Let's see how it does in the mud pit. Well, there you have it. I just turned my antique 1979 Tonka Toy Truck into a remote control. If you want to see this out in the rock garden for a proper test, or maybe for a spin through the sandbox, make sure you hit that subscribe button.